This probably won't have the production quality that my day in the life video has, link in description. I'm not going to be editing or anything, but actually I just wanted to share with you that I have never used Node.js before, and I've been dabbling with it. I actually have an SEO tool that I had built just using HTML, CSS, JavaScript that I use for clients, and it was just sorting through spreadsheets for me and letting me narrow down selections really easily, and then I would just kind of copy those over to Google Docs or a spreadsheet to ultimately keep track of like all the data that you get when you're in SEO, which is a lot. So this particular tool, I started hitting a wall because obviously when you're only using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, they're all client side, and you can't actually save anything out, and you can't save anything to file. That didn't stop me Googling it for like weeks to see is there any like way at all that you can literally force JavaScript to save something to even like a text file. Does not seem to be possible. You need a server-side thing for it. So I started looking into Node.js. I just want to share with you that, you know, if you are starting to learn about Node and you feel completely lost, I was exactly the same way. And now I feel like I'm just beginning to get an understanding of it, and I want to share it with you so that you can have the confidence to give it a go. So the first thing was, because it's called Node.js, I was convinced it was like jQuery or something where you can literally insert a JS file on your page and now you have like server-side stuff going on, okay? So you may laugh at me. I don't know, something about the way it's named, having the .js just threw me. Okay, so it's called Node.js, but it's not a JavaScript file that you're inserting in your page. You're actually going to be able to run a server. So let's say for me, traditionally, and I'm sure a lot of web designers and web developers out there, considering that WordPress has like over 60% of the CMS market, are using kind of Apache, PHP, MySQL, or MariaDB kind of setups. So that's what I've been traditionally used to doing, and I'm used to having like XAMPP or something to help me set up a local server on my machine, and then I run Apache, and now I can load like my PHP pages, for example. So the fact that you can use Node to actually launch a local host, which I'm just going to show you quickly on my install here. So when you set up Node on your machine, you are going to be able to run a local host, like a server on your machine without Apache. And it's all going to be controlled by Node. Now, something else I discovered on my journey. Node on its own is likely not going to be enough. I've used kind of the suite of three, okay? And that's Node, so Node.js, Express, which kind of helps you to, I don't know, use certain functions in Node. It basically makes it easier to use Node. That's the only way I can put it. So you have Node, you have Express, and then I'm using EJS as a kind of a templating language and a way to serve which pages I want to serve and where, basically is what that controls. So if I click on a certain link, what page do I want to load in for that link? Now it's, even though I'm making a web app, so mine had been a single page application. So I found it mentally hard to kind of say, okay, in a single page application, it's easier to make things persistent as you move between pages because they're not really pages. Everything is really coming from the one page. It might look like it's different pages, but actually I was just passing like hashtag whatever in the URL. So it was essentially always the same page. So being able to make certain values persistent as you navigate different pages in the app, I have found a challenge just in just the logic of how it was going to work, just because of how it was built before. So anyway, I'm sure I've waffled on enough about all that. I'm going to show you what I use. This is kind of coming from what I would have normally used for PHP installs. I use text pattern CMS, which is PHP MySQL. So this is what I would have normally done just to run websites on my server, make changes, whatever, before they would go live. And it's always nice to have a local server anyway. So I use brackets. I love brackets. It's just a really easy way. So I'm going to show you in here. Okay, so this is my actual Node install, okay? Now I'm running everything here from Brackets, but Brackets is really cool. You can actually select a project from this drop down, and once it's selected, it'll just load in all the files here. And if I want to select anything, I can just kind of, you know, tippy tappy edit it there. Whoops. So I can edit it here, save it, and then, you know, reload my web page. So that's my workflow. That's how I normally work anyway. So the structure of the actual thing, okay? App.js is what I'm using to actually kind of kick off the server and load in all the variables and the settings and the toolkit that I'm using, like Express and like EJS. So they have to be loaded in on this page. And then there are other settings that are loaded in on this page that just control everything that's being output then on the front end. So you can see here, as I mentioned, Express, okay? So we're just bringing that in. var express equals require express. Easy. Now, this code is a work in progress, okay? So if you've been someone who works with Node all the time, I know. And I'm always, okay, so this is another tip. When you don't know what you're doing and you're learning and you're kind of moving fast and breaking things, let's say, don't delete your code. And I do stand by this, even though it makes my code really messy and long. Comment it out. Because you just never know. You might need to use it again in the future. You also might break something, and you maybe just want to like go back to, okay, that thing didn't work out, but at least I didn't delete the other thing. And also you just have little snippets here that you've been researching, so like you might use them at some point, and it's nice to kind of have them there to look at them, and maybe they'll be useful in the future. But at some point, yeah, all of this will be deleted out as well, so it will be cleaner looking. But for the moment, this is how I'm working, and it's messy, and it's fine because I'm learning. So last night I was actually learning how to read a JSON file. So I have right now got to the point that I can successfully output the contents of the JSON file as a string, which is not what I want. I actually want like each value separately, maybe in a table that I can like copy and paste, or maybe a kind of a spreadsheet format, or a string of JSON isn't really much good to me. But at the same time, it is an achievement, even just being able to take something from like a stored JSON file and show it on the page. So ultimately what I'm trying to do is that I would have the ability to write, you know, a value and maybe a string to go with that value. Could be an ID, it could be like a little message, whatever. That I would actually be able to click a button on my web app, and that when clicked, that would write a line of code to the JSON file, which could then be read back on a page. So in this way, I'm kind of, I'm not using a database. I'm actually probably at the moment just going to use JSON files for things. I'm sure eventually as this thing gets bigger and bigger, like it will at some point require a database, but for the moment I would be delighted just to read and write JSON files, and it'll serve me well, you know. Now this line of code is express.static, and then it has public. If you want to serve static web pages, because let's say if you're using EJS like I am, you kind of have to define each EJS page that you want to load in at what point when someone clicks through your app or your website. Whatever you're building with this, you could build anything with this thing. So instead of, you know, sometimes you have pages that you want to serve and you don't want to have to be so specific, like, okay, when you click this, I want you to go to this page and load this one in. If you use a setup like this, I can now load any file under the public folder in the browser. Okay, so there would be some scenarios where you want to do that. It's also handy for storing your like static CSS files so that you can reference them in your EJS templates. And your static, just static, like your static JS, static CSS. And I actually have even like HTML pages in there that I just need to visit every now and then, but they're not really part of the app. So it's just a handy way that you can have this kind of bucket, throw the stuff in there that you just need to access. And then, as I said, it's handy for referencing your JavaScript and your CSS as well. So this is, I'm actually hard coding the user at the moment, so like it's not ideal. So at the moment I have to switch this if I want to get different values in. I'll show you on the front end now in a minute. So at the moment, if this value is set, so I just set it to Proximal, which is my company, I have certain hashtags and certain emojis that are going to load in on a socials page. So, and the only way I can change that to another project, okay, this is the pain, okay, is to actually manually change the name here. That's because I just don't know it well enough to do it any other way. So I was quite happy that I got this working, and it works, and I don't mind going in manually. Now when you change something here manually like that, so if I change the new user here and I want the new user to load into my front end interface then on the live thing, I do have to shut down the server and restart it. So that's a whole other thing. It's a bit of an ordeal, but it's fine for me at the moment. I have no problem just changing the name there, and then I can restart the server and it pulls it in. Fab. So here we have, this is kind of to do with the EJS templating. So you're actually saying, like, when you're looking for the home page, basically is just the / to render pages index, which is actually an EJS file. So I'm now in the EJS file able to use a reusable header and footer. So those of you coming from PHP, you would be more familiar to this type of setup where you have a reusable header and footer, and you can use like an include, which is what it would have been in PHP. You would have had an include file to say include my header, include my footer. This basically works the same way. So you can define your own kind of reusable bits, and then you can have every page pull that reusable header and reusable footer, which is brilliant. Okay, so straight away we can see, like, this is the server-side language. This is more like a PHP system, or, you know, it's easier to template it out than what I was trying to do with just vanilla JavaScript, let's call it. Okay, so this is actually where I'm outputting my JSON that I was boasting about earlier. Touch on the JSON a little bit. So I just want to show you here where I have my data is defined, and it's requiring my data.json. And if we go over here, you can see my data.json. So it was just, at the time, I was just trying to find any information around the internet, any bits of code at all that would help me. So I think that this was just left over from one of those attempts, you know. So it has menu, and it has ID file, value file, and then it has menu 2, ID file, value file. I think this might actually not be formatted exactly the right way, but that's for another day's work. So if we go back to app.js, you can see here you're requiring that path. Now, because I'm using templating and I'm serving my pages from different locations and stuff, this // is just giving like the full path. It's kind of just helpful, like if you put something in and it seems like your system can't reference the file, just try putting // and it likely would be able to find it then, and the path will be right. So this is requiring the JSON file, and then here you can see while I'm rendering my index page, so that's done with this thing app-get. Okay, so any request for the home page. And then this is tapping into my EJS files. I'll show you where they are now. And then I'm also putting in that I want you to send to that page my data.menu. Okay, so I'm saying use this, basically get this JSON file, and there's something in there for menu. And so this is just so cool. I just think this is so cool, and it's so powerful. I've literally only discovered this like last night, so I'm still like very early stages with this kind of functionality. But I mean, without even having a database, this just opens up a whole new world of opportunity. A whole new world. Okay, so that's that. All the boasting really should be over. Okay. So these are all of my different pages that I have recreated from what was the static website that I mentioned earlier. And they're things that I just very frequently use for SEO stuff, so it just helps me so much having these done. Okay. And this here actually starts the server. Okay, so I'm going to show you this now because this is something else. Like, I haven't typically used terminal to execute commands. Like, I really like phpMyAdmin and I like cpanel and stuff, and like I always, even with Git, I've struggled. Like, I just rather like an interface than to type into a box. And it's a fear of getting stuff wrong, honestly. It's a fear of, like, you know, when you type something into that box, if you delete something, well, that's on you. There's no little pop-up that's going to go like, are you sure you want to delete this whole folder of whatever? And you go, oh shit, no, I didn't mean to do that. You know, when you're using commands like that, I don't have the confidence, really. I haven't used it enough. That's my only problem with it. If I would have used it more, I'm sure I would be flying at it. But it's just not my strength, really. So even when I'm launching the terminal, so this is my little app here, I just have no sync. That's an iCloud thing, so I'm just not syncing it to iCloud. So if I right click here, okay, and I can say new terminal folder. So you can see here I'm already in the correct folder for this. So now I'm going to say node and I'm going to go app.js. That's it. Okay, return. Hopefully it works. Okay, so it looks like it's worked. Server is listening on port 3000. So here I've said app listen 3000. So this is, I'm telling it to use this port. And then I'm also outputting. So this console.log is that, like, once it is, then show the message in console, server is listening on port 3000. So that's just a handy thing to, like, is it working or not? And you will get errors there sometimes if you have changed code and something isn't quite working anymore. You're likely going to see a lot of errors in that terminal window to kind of, and they're very helpful to kind of show you, like, what's stopping things working or what's it not able to access or whatever. So we're going to just go to the actual page now. And we're going to load up our local host just the same way we would for Apache or any other thing. So hopefully it's working. Boom. Okay, so this is, it's recreated. So I used to actually load in projects here. And they were not even real pages, but it used to be handy because it was a single page and going between pages wasn't an issue, which is now a thing that I have to overcome. But I would never have been able to read a JSON file. So I think this is so cool. So this is just what I achieved last night. Now this, I want, basically I'm building this whole thing out. So there's a vision, guys. There's a vision. So I want to have a kind of a checklist as you're doing things for, because all of these could be for one blog article, you know. So you could put something through testing, you could check Google Trends, you could do your keywording. You could do your page titles and metas. You could post the blog article to social media. You could compress the images for the blog article before you posted the blog. And you also could generate YouTube schema if you included video in your blog. So what I want to do ultimately is that as you go through each one of these steps, if you don't have to do all of them, but the ones that you did do, that you could just kind of press a button on any of those screens and then write a line to the JSON file, which would then output here as a kind of a checklist almost to show, like, what's been done for this one blog, you know? So that's just a me thing. That's like where I'm bringing it right now, but I'll just bring you through the different pages. So that's home. So you saw in the system how we're loading this page. So I'll go back just to go back. So this one is loading the home page, okay? And this is what's getting the JSON. And this is defining where that JSON file is, okay? And this is making sure that the path is the right kind of path for any page to be able to get it or whatever. Well, I'd probably just send it to the home page for the moment. Okay, so they're all the little details, right? So if I click in now, okay, so I just clicked into web testing and you can see the URL at the top is web testing. And the page that's loading here, I'm going to bring you back in here, okay? So we're going to go into, this is how EJS works, and this is how the kind of, it's templated out. So if you see here, you have a folder called views and you have pages and partials. And if you click into pages, you have index.ejs, okay? So that's actually what's being served here. So you have index.ejs, and see here, there's an include, and it's including from the partials folder, which is here. Okay, so in here, so I'll show you what's in here first, and then we'll just go back to this page. So we're including partials head, so let's take a look at head first. Okay, so this is familiar, right? So you have your viewport stuff, your page title, referencing jQuery, getting in style sheets, bootstrap. This clipboard thing is so handy. That's a file that just lets you like save stuff to a clipboard, and then you can take it out afterwards. But yeah, it's very good. And then I have some like Google Charts just for showing, you know, some kind of graphs or whatever in the front end. Okay, so that's showing all of it's my kind of static JavaScript and CSS, or I wouldn't say static, but stuff that's running on the front end is not server-side JavaScript. That's so weird to even say that there is server-side JavaScript, but yeah. So that's the head. This is the header, okay, which is my nav. So opening the nav, and it's bringing in all of the URLs here. This is actually left over from the other system, so I'll be getting rid of this at some point. And then there was always a caching issue with the other system because of single page nature of it, so I always had a manual thing to clear the cache, which I don't need as much in this build. And then you have footer.ejs. Okay, so this is literally, again, copied off the internet. So we're going to go 2022 Proximo web design. Ooh, caps. Okay. Now this won't load until I reload the whole server, so you're not going to see that yet. Okay, so we're going to go back to the index. So you can see here you have an include file for head, which is where we were bringing in the JavaScript, the CSS. Now, a note to make is that they're also coming from the public folder, so they would not have loaded in this page unless I had that public static directory set up that I showed you the code for in app.js. So just remember that, okay? So you do need the public folder for serving the CSS and JavaScript. So then we have the include partials header, which, as you know, was the navigation. And we have the include partials footer, which was the footer that I just changed. Apologies, I don't even know who wrote that other one, but thank you for, you know, putting code on the internet, because how else can we learn? So again, yeah, we've all the pages here, okay, and you've already seen how you can click through them. Okay, so you're clicking through everything here. Now, oh, these aren't working. Oh, my emojis aren't working. Okay, well, this is the nature of building, I guess. So, oh my god, that's so funny. Okay, well, I'm just gonna leave it. You know what? Like, I'm gonna show my failure to the world, okay? Because this is how it happens. Like, I will fix this in a minute. It's what happens when you're building stuff. Sometimes you break other stuff. I'm pretty sure the way that I'm pulling in the emojis is wrong anyway. I think they could probably be in a JSON file. I'm kind of faking a JSON file in app.js in order to display them. It's not right. However, let's just continue because I have one here at least. So this is just a cool little thing. This is just a thing you could build in JavaScript. Like, this isn't, you don't actually have to have Node for this particular thing. Node is more controlling like what's outputting for each page, and yes, it does load in these variables and the project name and stuff like that right now. But if you were just working on something yourself, you could really build something very easily for just social posting. And where I find this handy is just when I'm using the desktop to post to, like, because you have desktop Instagram now, and you have desktop Twitter. You could post to obviously Facebook on desktop and stuff as well. So sometimes you're posting to like maybe 3 different places on the internet, and it's nice to just have something that you can just copy and paste like over, you know what I mean, into each one. Just handy, like, I don't know, it's just, I find it very useful. So So this kind of thing, we'll just take the one that works, okay? So you'd have something there and you're like, check this link out. Learning Node, Express, EJS. And then I might pull these in, okay? And so I'd have something that's like multiple lines, and I can kind of do like emojis to separate out each one, and then I can kind of pull in what is a common kind of string of hashtags. Like I can change them up as well if I want to. But just sometimes you do, like I'm always probably putting an SEO tag onto things, and I'm always putting a web design tag onto things. So those common ones that you use, I find this like so handy. And then I have this one that will just see the count below. So again, this is just JavaScript, like this isn't, oh, this did update, great. Okay, taking back what I said earlier, when you change content in an EJS template, you need only refresh the page and you'll see that live. Of course, like I already knew that. So anyway, this is only JavaScript. It's just a simple character count, but it's just very handy because you can kind of, you know, you can put in like your emojis easier on desktop. I just find this easier than trying to, I know there's the function button. So if I press, oh yeah, well it doesn't work here anyway. Yeah, my emojis aren't loading anyway. But yeah, I just find this handy than trying to like load an emojis thing from the keyboard. So much for watching. I really hope, even with my crazy hair and everything, I really hope that this helped you, even just to make people feel that they have the confidence to just give it a go. Give Node.js a go, especially if you're a front end like web designer like myself. I'm finding that it's so much easier to work with. Now, in some ways, it can be more difficult than PHP. In some ways. PHP can sometimes be quite straightforward. However, I just love the fact that they figured out, it's just the whole thing of the thing. Being able to run JavaScript as a server-side language and being able to keep everything in that one ecosystem. I love it. Like, I love that you can run a server from it. I love that they have like templating kind of languages like EJS to help you out if you want to, you know, run it like that. And just, there's amazing, like the more you're Googling it and looking for code and stumbling across things, I just think people are building like amazing things with this, and I'm excited to see where I can bring my own little app along to, and I mean, it's saving me time anyway. Before I hooked it up to Node, but I just think now the ability to write and read from JSON, which just sounds so funny that like I could have just used a database, I guess, at any stage, and I probably would have been easier. I already had Apache set up, so I could have just used PHP, but I don't know what it was, just something drove me towards Node, and I'm really glad that I'm trying my best to learn it, and it feels like it's not impossible to learn this thing. I'm getting there slowly, but I'm getting there. And I hope that if you're watching this video and you're somebody that was feeling the same way and you're kind of thinking, will I dabble? Will I, maybe like me, you have something that was built in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you're kind of missing that bit of functionality, whether it's to read or write to a file or even hook it up to a database. You can do that with Node. So I think it's worth a try. There are loads of hosting companies. I found DigitalOcean really, really good actually. Their blogs keep coming up when you're searching. I'm going to put some links in the description here to some of the articles that I found, and to DigitalOcean's blog, which I found really helpful. So the kettle's boiling, gotta go have tea. Thanks for listening.